One of the main reasons that people move to St. Augustine is because it's a cute, small, charming town. But many people that are living here these days don't feel that same way anymore. What's up everyone? My name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in Northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in Northeastern Florida. So what I wanted to do in today's video is take a look at why St. Augustine is so charming, and then also take a look from a local's perspective as why that charm is starting to fade away. And that's a real thing that we have here. So if you are looking to relocate to our area, I want to make sure that you're fully aware of everything that's going on here in town. So I want to start off with why St. Augustine is so charming. Now, of course, we are a coastal town. We're right on the beach. We have I think it's 42 miles of coastline and beach access, which are all beautiful. Our water isn't as nice as South Florida, but our beaches are way nicer than probably some of the best in the entire state of Florida, because we have huge, wide beaches. You can bring your dog on, you can drive a car on. It makes it really awesome to access the beach. But aside from that, we do also have a beautiful downtown St. Augustine, which is a historic town. It's the nation's oldest city, and it has tons of old historic buildings right there in downtown St. Augustine that add to the charm and the culture of our area. You have the Castillo de San Marcos, which is a Spanish fort right on the waterfront, initially built to protect the city of St. Augustine from potential invaders. You also have Flagler College, which was the Flagler Hotel, which was started back in the early 1900s. Some of the most beautiful architecture in downtown St. Augustine. You have St. George Street in the Colonial Quarter. A lot of those houses, houses are now commercial shops. Were transferred from houses to commercial buildings in order to really, sell the tourist lifestyle here, sell you a whole bunch of knickknacks, some food, all that kind of stuff. Right on St. George Street, you have Avila Street, which is the oldest street in the United States, a brick paved street with some restaurants and cute little shops on there. You also have Casa Monica, beautiful hotel, and then you have the Leitner Museum. A whole bunch of these buildings add to the culture and the charm of downtown St. Augustine because of how old and historic they are. Not to mention that St. Augustine has been passed through a couple different hands. It was originally Spanish, it went through, I think, to the English, then to the French, then to the United States. So you see a little bit of flares of all those cultures throughout the architecture here in downtown St. Augustine. I had a friend that visited, and she's a flight attendant for, I think, United, and she's gone to New Orleans and a whole bunch of different other places, of course, because she's a flight attendant. But she was like, man, this place is very similar, at least a couple sections of it are very similar to the French Quarter that they have over in New Orleans. And whether it's the Spanish or the English or the French vibes or the American vibes that you're looking for, you're going to be able to find it in downtown St. Augustine. Now, aside from the architecture in downtown St. Augustine, you also have tons of art galleries. You also have a whole bunch of live music down there. It really is a great, vibrant place to go and hang out. A whole bunch of bars, restaurants. Some of the best food in the city is going to be in downtown St. Augustine, and really outside in the surrounding areas as well. So there's a lot of good things that bring people to the city of St. Augustine that really add to the charm and the flavor of the town. Now, back when I was a kid, it was a much smaller place, right? It wasn't really on the map. It was a lot of times referenced as the hidden gem of the South. And now, according to Southern Magazine, we are the town of the South, which I think we won last year, beating out Charleston, which is a pretty big accomplishment. And that's all because of, the restaurants downtown, the access to the beach, just the views that you get with the architecture and the water, the intercoastal and the beach. It's just a very beautiful and scenic town. Gives you a whole bunch of things to do and a lot of options. So back when I was a kid, this really wasn't as cool as it is today. In my personal opinion, I think that St. Augustine has gotten cooler and cooler. Has it gotten more expensive with that? 100% it has. I'm not denying that. But because of those changes over the past couple of years, many people that have lived here for their entire lives, 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, have seen it change so rapidly that they're not a fan of the change. But I still believe that St. Augustine is one of the best towns in Florida. It really is a great place to live. Still has that small town feel. Even though it is changing a little bit, it's just different than what people had when they moved here 10, 20, 30 years ago than what it is today. And that's no different than pretty much any other town in the United States. Things have changed rapidly, especially since the pandemic, but St. Augustine was changing long before that. So what I'm going to do in this video is cover a couple of the negative things, wait for it, that make St. Augustine a less and less charming town. And that is something that, if you are moving here and you maybe came here 5 or 10 years ago and you aren't really sure how the town is today, I think it's very important to know. But in reality, I still think St. Augustine is one of the best towns in the South. I love living here. I love the arts. I love the culture. I love the architecture downtown. I love the amphitheater, the farmers markets, art shows, movies, all this kind of stuff right here in St. Augustine. It's a great place to live, but it doesn't come without some negatives. And let's talk about them. So the number one complaint from many people is going to be the over-tourism of our area. Downtown St. Augustine is pretty much solely focused on how can we get more out-of-state people to visit our area, how can we get more tourists to our town and make it a awesome place for them to come and visit. And they've pretty much ignored what the locals want to say about it. And that leads to the locals becoming very frustrated, which I totally understand. Essentially from this point, which is like the beginning of December to the end of December, really starts over the Thanksgiving week. You don't want to go downtown if you're a local. Maybe if you have friends in town, you might try and hit like a Tuesday or a Wednesday to go downtown so you beat the rush. But if you're looking at the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going downtown during the Night of Lights, which is a beautiful light show that they put on from the end of November to the end of January throughout the city of downtown St. Augustine, it can be a complete mess. And I mean, I'm talking like the crowds of like Times Square. And really walking down there a couple times, I was like body to body with people just like moseying through St. George Street as like one single unit with a whole bunch of people. It really is a big mess down there. So as a local, we really don't go to downtown St. Augustine that much during that time, and summer as well. Summer is not as bad as this time of the year, but it is still pretty crowded in the peaks of summer when people are vacationing, they have their kids off of school, they're coming downtown to visit everything here in St. Augustine. So what once was quiet, quaint streets of downtown St. Augustine throughout most of the year are now packed with tourists and other people coming to visit the town, locals sometimes, and you know what, it's just not exactly as nice as it was before, but all the businesses down there are thriving. The city is also, that's one of the main things that the city of St. Augustine makes their money from. A lot of our tax base comes from the people that are spending their money in downtown St. Augustine. I think it's like 35% of our tax revenue comes from the tourists that are coming into our town. So once again, a very important part of our town. But it is something that if you are looking to enjoy downtown St. Augustine more often, it's something to consider. So this leads to many of the attractions of why you might want to live here surrounding around downtown St. Augustine to be kind of crowded, right? If you need to go to a restaurant at this time of the year, it's going to be at least an hour wait before you get sat down at a table. Now, like I said, if you're going like a Monday or a Tuesday, you're not going to have that problem. It's going to be fine. But if you're going Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you can almost guarantee that you're going to be waiting for pretty much everything. When it comes down to parking, when it comes down to an ice cream cone, when it comes down to going out to eat with your friends and family, if you want to go grab a drink at a bar, it's more than likely going to be pretty crowded. Now, another growing pain that is kind of hurting the charm of St. Augustine is that they are developing a lot of housing in our area. So if you don't know, we have roughly 330,000 people that call St. Johns County home, and by 2050, they're expecting that to go up to 660,000 people. So our population is going to double in that short amount of time. In expectation of that, and also the people that are moving here today, they have been building a ton across all of St. Johns County. Many of the areas that used to just be swamps or trees or farms or whatever that is, have really been clear cut and been, hey, 1,000 home development here, 1,000 home development there. It's been going all over St. Johns County and the entire state of Florida for that matter. Now, I will mention none of these projects are really surrounding downtown St. Augustine, and all of that is protected, preserved area by the Historical Architecture Review Board downtown. St. Augustine Beach, Villano does have a little bit of new construction, but it's not as much as you're seeing throughout the rest of the county, where really your farmland, your silviculture, which is just growing trees, and really the hunting land that they had out there has started to be converted into HOA developments with thousands of homes in them. Now, I have no problem with building more homes for the population that want to live here and enjoy St. Johns County and St. Augustine, but when you go into a new construction community, it doesn't feel like a neighborhood, in my opinion. A lot of these neighborhoods, the entire area has been clear cut. Everything is brand new, which is a good thing and a bad thing. You know, I live in West Augustine. If you drive through West Augustine, you can see that most of the houses are a little bit smaller, but they're sitting underneath a canopy of trees. So you still have a whole bunch of natural wildlife around you. You also have a lot of beautiful trees, a lot of beautiful oaks around here, palm trees, all that kind of stuff. When you look at that versus a new construction community, you can see a stark difference. And Of course, they do have trees that are going to grow eventually, but as of right now, when you go into those communities, it's pretty much just clear cut. The sun's beating down on your house. There's no shade to speak of at all. It doesn't feel like a mature community. And that's one of the biggest things that I see as like a negative towards the charm of the city of St. Augustine. And I've looked at the city of St. Augustine and the St. Johns County growth plan, and one of the main points in there is that they want to slow down the amount of master plan communities that they're approving, and they want to start gearing, and hopefully they can move builders to this, gearing people towards going towards the infill lots that we already have. So the roads are already there, the infrastructure is already there. All they need to do is hook up the utilities and build a house on an individual lot versus these massive master plan communities with amenity centers that are clear cutting all of the trees around here. So do I think that's going to make 100% shift from, hey, we're building 100 master plan communities here and we're going to start building in all these infill lots? No, I think it's probably going to slightly adjust this to like, hey, we're going to do like 80 master plan communities and focus that rest over here. How they're going to go about that, incentivize builders to build on individual lots for less profit margin versus these massive master plan communities where they can buy a whole bunch of acreage, clear cut it, and then put a whole bunch of homes in there and make a whole bunch of money. I don't know how they're going to do that, but that is the plan in the strategic growth plan for the area. Another thing that people are really not happy about is the rising costs. So right now, the median sale price for a home here in St. Johns County is right around $400,000, which comparatively, and for most people that live here, is much more expensive than it was 5 to 10 years ago. And that has a lot to do with the pandemic and how it sparked people to move down here, because at the end of the day, you were getting a 3% interest rate. So it made it almost a no-brainer for anyone who ever had a mortgage in their life when they look at a 3% interest rate versus today when you have about a 6.5% interest rate. So that spurred a lot of activity for the good and the bad. Obviously, we're talking about the bad stuff here, but a lot of good things for our area in terms of the economic output that activity brought. But that is one of the negatives, is that the costs here have gone up significantly and the jobs here really haven't kept up. But that's really no different than the rest of the nation. To give you a good example, I was just talking with my mother-in-law, who was a principal and a superintendent, I believe, of schools in New York City. She just retired a couple years ago. And I asked her, because she still teaches at NYU, and she has kids that are in their undergraduate class that are going to be teachers. And to me, I'm like, why would you go to NYU to become a teacher in New York? I was like, that seems like a lot of money to pay for your schooling to make not so much money when you come out of the system. And I asked her, I said, what's the starting pay for a teacher in New York City? And she said $55,000. And that's the starting pay of a teacher here in St. Johns County. Now, the difference is that year over year, they get increases every year, where here in St. Johns County, that is not the case. You pretty much stay around that $55,000 baseline. So for the people making around that type of money here in St. Johns County, it's become a lot harder to buy a house and nearly impossible unless you have a huge down payment, perfect credit, and really no debt. So it's made it really tough for the majority of people that live and work here to be able to afford houses. So a lot of the people that are relocating here are the ones that are buying the houses at these really over $500,000 prices, or they're people more than likely coming from a different area. So not only are we talking about increase in property values, but we're also talking about an increase in property taxes. Now here in the state of Florida, here in St. Johns County, property taxes are based off of the market value of the property. And if we have rising property values, then we also have rising property taxes. Aside from that, this past November, we did just vote on raising property taxes by 1 millage rate point, which means essentially if you own a $300,000 home, your taxes are going to go up by about $300 per year, which for a lot of people is a huge chunk of money. Back when I was a kid, we used to rent an apartment on St. Augustine Beach for $800 a month, which at that point was a good bit of money. That same apartment, they've actually been converted to condos and now they're short-term rentals and everything. You can get a month-to-month rental there for about $3,000 a month. So things have changed pretty drastically, but it has been about 20 years since I lived in St. Augustine Beach. So with all of these price increases, it's really starting to price out the locals. And you can look at the statistics here. Many of the people that live in Florida, live in St. Johns County, are moving to cheaper areas. They're going to Tennessee, they're going to North Carolina, they're going to Georgia, because the cost of living here has just gotten so expensive that they can't afford it anymore. So what we're seeing is a changing demographic of the people that live here. Now, for you to run into someone that's from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania here, it is very normal. for you to run into someone that is actually born and raised in St. Augustine is actually a pretty rare thing. Okay, so we talked about the tourism, we talked about the overdevelopment, we talked about people moving here that, are relocating from another area to live in our beautiful city. And with all of that, we have issues with infrastructure, we have issues with congestion and traffic, and that's no surprise, right? Now, if you're asking me personally, I think I've lived in a whole bunch of different other places outside of St. Augustine here, guys, and the traffic here is really not bad. Yeah, you might sit at the red light at US 1 and 312 for 1 or 2 cycles during rush hour, but outside of that, it's really not too bad. But there are choke points throughout the county that do need infrastructure improvements, and we're dealing with those growing pains every day. But the good thing is that they are happening and they are on the docket to be done. So a lot of these areas that they're talking about traffic issues, they are going to be either they're in the process of remediating it or it's on the docket to be remediated. And I know I mentioned night of lights before, but that's one of the bigger things here is hey, the parking for downtown St. Augustine during this time of year where we have this influx of people coming into downtown is really not great. You have some street parking there, which you got to parallel park, and then we only really have one parking garage that you can go to, which I think has around 1,000 spaces, but during this time of year, it'll be completely full. So you'll have a line of people trying to get into the parking garage and just causing congestion and traffic along that street that the parking garage is on, and it's completely full anyway, so they're not going to get in for probably 30 minutes to an hour until someone leaves, right? So that is a big problem that we're having in downtown St. Augustine, but they are building another parking garage out here in the West Augustine, the West City area, right by the Browdy's Liquor Mart at the intersection of US 1 and King Street, which should be done, I believe, by 2026, which should alleviate some of these parking issues that we have. They'll also have a shuttle that'll bring you right downtown. Now, what I want to do is take a look at some of the people that are posting on Facebook, on the St. Augustine News Facebook page, which is probably the largest Facebook group here in St. Augustine that people can post on. You'll get approved to just join if you're visiting and you want to know more about St. Augustine. If you actually want to know information where people aren't going to jump down your throat and everything, you can also join my Facebook group. It's Living in St. Augustine. It's the same logo there. I post a whole bunch of information from just my short form content, what I break down from here. But aside from that, if you're a local, you can get on there and comment, ask questions yourself, and get answers from locals that live here, and hopefully they won't be too nasty, unlike the St. Augustine News page. So what I'm going to do is take a look at a couple of the posts that I've seen over the past couple weeks on the St. Augustine News page that are going to go over some of the negatives about the development here in town, the traffic, etc., all that kind of stuff. Now, I would like to point out that most people that live a happy and fulfilled life don't go on Facebook and post negative things like this. They're actually pretty normal, and they don't actually go on Facebook and engage with people like this because it's a waste of their time. But there are people that point this stuff out, and I want to make sure you guys get the full 360 of what's going on here in town, so I want to read this one to you. St. Augustine News: I'm pissed, hurt, upset, livid. Villano has gone from a little nothing place. Construction on the corner I knew nothing about, a condo tower. Same street as the Bunny Motel in Villano Beach. So in Villano Beach, which is really the southern point by Porpoise Point of Villano, which is their main street area, the main town of Villano, has started to see some development. There's a townhome community going up. There was just a hotel built with a beautiful restaurant on top. And there's another condo development coming to the area as well. In my opinion, the area is still very slow and sleepy, but if you're comparing it back 40 years ago when there was really nothing there, it is much different. And I totally sympathize with her there, but I challenge this person with the question as in, what area isn't different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago? There has to be some type of development, and when you live in a beautiful area like St. Augustine, you can't expect it not to grow. Another meme, and of course I'll show you guys all this stuff, but this is a meme about the area, and it says, "Thou shalt not complain about Florida traffic unless you are from the state of Florida. Otherwise, you are the traffic." And that's one thing here, is that the people in St. Augustine are not used to the amount of traffic that we've seen, especially since the pandemic years. It really has increased a lot since then, but in reality, it's still not bad at all. Anyone that's moved here that I really know, that's moved from another area, hasn't complained about the traffic to me outside of the school pickup lines and rush hour at US 1 and 312. Outside of that, there's really not too many bad areas of traffic, especially if you've lived in an area where you've had like standstill traffic. It's not nearly near that point. I was just in rush hour yesterday. We had a baby doctor appointment at Flagler Hospital, which is right at US 1 and 312, and I live about 10 minutes from there normally. It took me about 15 minutes to get home. I'm not going to go cry a river. I'm not going to go post on Facebook about it. It's fine. There's really not a problem. But I'm not saying that they shouldn't do the infrastructure improvements. I'm all for that. I definitely want that to happen. But in reality, you see people cry and moan on Facebook. It's not the worst as they make it seem. And this is the last post that I'll talk about. They just did an extension on 312, which cuts over to Holmes, whereas before you had to get on 207 to cut over to Holmes. So they just did a cut through that goes, pretty much right through the middle. So it's a straight road to get onto Holmes Boulevard. You have someone that's posting here who's like, oh, the traffic is worse. Hey, great job on this 312 extension. The traffic is worse. But if you do some investigating, you look at some of the comments there, you see that there was a car accident. So, I mean, it is what it is. There's people that are going to get car accidents. Their lives in that situation are in danger, and I think they need to be taken care of. I don't think that's anything that's too crazy to say, but you can't blame everything on infrastructure improvements. It's like you complain about the traffic, but then you complain about the infrastructure improvement. And in reality, it wasn't even the infrastructure improvement, it was a car accident. So a lot of the noise that we're hearing on the St. Augustine news page is really unfounded. So let's talk about some of the good things about living here in St. Augustine to round this out. I know I talked about a lot of the negatives here, but with any type of growth, there is going to be some pains, right? If we're going to have people moving to our town, we're going to need to build houses for them, right? And it's a double-edged sword, and I try to be as informative as possible with all of this, but people complain about housing prices and they complain about development. If you don't do one of them, right? If you don't develop houses, well, what do you think about the housing prices? Are they going to go up or are they going to go down? Well, if there's a whole bunch of demand, well, then the prices of these houses are going to continue to rise, thus pricing out the locals that already live here and are complaining about prices. If you do develop, right, you're going to potentially keep those prices stable or even lower them. But you're also going to clear cut a whole bunch of areas and you're going to make more housing, more traffic and congestion for our area. It's a double-edged sword, guy. There isn't a right answer to this. There isn't going to be a sunshine and rainbows answer to this. But what I do believe is that St. Johns County is gearing to grow at a moderate pace. They want to grow, and they want to grow in the right way, and that's what a lot of the county commissioners have run on, is growing in the right way and slowing down the development so that we can increase the infrastructure projects to be able to grow at the same pace. So that's one really good thing. I think the leadership in this town and the people that do live here and love this town are vocal about the issues so that we can get those issues addressed. And with that being said, I know I talked about a whole bunch of neighborhoods that are just new construction neighborhoods that have been clear cut. There are plenty of other neighborhoods that will fit what you're looking for that still provide that. They provide a neighborhood, they provide the mature trees in the area. It feels nicer, it feels cooler than a lot of these new construction neighborhoods. Though the new construction neighborhoods do provide a lot of amenities, a lot of upside to them, especially when you're financing them. They're throwing out the deals like crazy to you guys right now. But if you are looking for that different type of lifestyle outside the new construction community, there are tons of neighborhoods available. Just like West Augustine, it's just outside of downtown St. Augustine. I'm a 15-20 minute walk to downtown St. Augustine, and the housing prices here, I bought a new construction house, 1,100 square feet for $300,000. So I'm right outside of the nation's oldest city. I'm 15 minutes to the beach. I'm 15 minutes to the St. Augustine Amphitheater. I'm a 20-minute walk to downtown St. Augustine. It's a pretty great place to live. You can find affordability here, you can find a mature neighborhood, and you're right outside of downtown. I don't even deal with any of the traffic there because there's a whole bunch of back roads for me to get around. So it's really a great place to live. You also have St. Augustine South. You have Volano Beach, which still has a whole bunch of charming areas and neighborhoods to look at that have already been developed that you can't develop any more on, right? Then you also have St. Augustine Beach, which is where I grew up for the most part, that you really can't do much to. They've already developed that area a long time ago. So are there a couple of new construction houses here and there? Are there a couple of townhomes, that have been developed in the area? Yes, but nothing that would change the overall fabric of how that neighborhood looks. Despite all these challenges, I do think St. Augustine is still one of the most charming and best places to live in the entire state of Florida. So if you are looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida. Until next time, guys, I'll see you.